Well, welcome everybody to the Oracle Apps Day 2020 and this session entitled Oracle Autonomous, what does it mean for PeopleSoft customers? Well, I'd like to introduce our speakers to you today. My name is Graham Smith. I'm the head of PeopleSoft technology within version 1. And my co-worker, one of my co-workers, Kashyap Raja, who is senior PeopleSoft technology consultant with over 14 years of experience as a PeopleSoft administrator. Well, I'd like to begin this session with a question. And if you follow us on Twitter or LinkedIn or other social media, then you may have seen me post this question. What do a bunch of turnips, a 1970s British rock band, a create index command, and the sliding doors on a Great Western Railway class 802 train have in common? Now, unfortunately, we're all muted. And as much as I'd like us to be calling out answers to this, I'm afraid these sessions we're all muted. You know what? If you have questions or you want to pose an answer to this question, then feel free to use the Q&A link on the top in the right-hand side of the screen. And please ask any questions you like as we go through this session. We won't answer them as we go, but hopefully if there's time at the end, we'll answer some of them. And if any that we don't get round to answering, we'll definitely make a point of getting answers to you. And just include your name in the question so we know who's asking. So anyway, what's the answer to this question? Well, I put it on social media last week and we got some answers like this. Too old to rock and roll, but too young to die. Do they have that in common? Maybe. They all give you heartburn. Well, that may be true as well, but that depends if you like 1970s prog rock. Thought to give a good performance, but pick 'em right. Well, yeah, maybe that's true as well. And one of my friends said that maybe this was the pub quiz from hell. Well, let me tell you this. As tenuous as it might be, this is what they have in common. It's automation. Let me explain. So 1733, Jethro Tull sparked a massive revolution in agricultural automation by inventing the seed drill. This was one of the very first machines that brought automation to farming. And what the seed drill did was it didn't just dig a hole and plant a seed. It dug a hole, planted a seed, filled it in a little bit, and then planted another seed and then filled that in. Why? It's because when the first seed came up, it would be attacked by the dreaded turnip fly and the other seed would have a chance of survival. It was an incredibly innovative machine. And like I say, it sparked a massive revolution in the automation of agriculture. What's this got to do with the 1970s prog rock band? Well, there's frontman Ian Anderson. They just happen to be named after Jethro Tull. I know it's tenuous. You might say they evolved as well. They started off as a blues, rock and jazz band. And as you know, well, you may know, 1970s, they were prog rock heroes. Anyway, enough of my youth. Autonomous farming is now commonplace in our world. You know, we'll find Internet of Things devices managing fields, measuring temperature and ground, humidity, soil temperatures, and gathering the data for that, transmitting it up to some central machine, which is monitoring all of this and making decisions on the fly, even to automating water taps that will maybe pump water or pesticides into a field in response to data that's being gathered. Just automation from the seed drill to fully automated farming. There's another story I would love to tell you if we had time about Internet of Things, PeopleSoft and Cloud Manager. I've put a link in the slides. You'll all get a copy of these slides eventually. If you want to read that story, just click the link and you'll see how I connected my motorbike to PeopleSoft running in Oracle Cloud. Anyway, that's another story. So let's keep our tenuous link going. We got a few other things to talk about. Great Western Railway Class 802 took over from the Class 43s in 2019. And there's me standing on a very busy commuter train from Oxford to London, so crowded. You can see in the background there, everyone's sitting on the floor. I am crammed into the corner of the doorway of the carriage. And guess what? The door's opening and closing. Why does it keep opening and closing? Well, someone decided to automate it. The way it's automated is you stand on a pressure pad near to the door and it opens. Of course, it doesn't know that you don't want to go through the door. It doesn't know that you're just stood there because there's no seats available. So automation, Good automation? I'll leave you to decide. So the final thing in our little quiz is the create index command. What's this got to do with automation? Well, the create index command for your DBAs and developers out there, it's used to build indexes on your database, PeopleSoft database. What's this got to do with automation? Well, there's been an evolution in Oracle database technology. Larry Ellison and colleagues founded what was then to become Oracle in 1977. They worked on a CIA project that had a code name of Oracle, and that later became the company name. And in 1979, the first commercially available Oracle database became available, version 2. Last year, we saw the release of 19C, and the 20C release has just been made available on preview release. Well, 8 years ago, Oracle provided database technology running in their cloud infrastructure as a service, and that's been available for 8 years. Quite a few years ago, Oracle released Autonomous Database. Oh, what's this Autonomous Database? And that's what this session's about. But one of the things that the Autonomous Database will do is monitor your system, monitor the SQL execution that's taking place on your system, and decide, can I build an index or adjust an index to make that SQL run faster? It creates indexes automatically. It's self-tuning, if you like. If you want to see a great visual on the evolution of the Oracle database, Ricardo Gonzalez, who's one of the product development managers at Oracle on the database platform, created this great piece of artwork recently. There's a link to it on Twitter. You can go and download that, frame it, and enjoy it if you're that way inclined. So what's Oracle Autonomous Database? Well, in 2017 at the Oracle Open World Conference, Oracle announced the world's first autonomous database. It has a number of characteristics that make it autonomous, not just doing things automatically, but doing them in response to some event. So it's self-driving. You can provision one of these quite easily and automatically. It'll tune itself. It'll create indexes automatically. It'll scale up and down in response to demand. Traditionally, if you wanted to assign more CPUs or memory to your database, you had to shut it down, assign the CPUs, and then power it back up again. Well, with the Autonomous Database, you just set how many CPUs you wanted to scale to, push the button, and the CPUs that are assigned while it's up and running, while it's operational, and you get the immediate value from benefit from those additional CPUs and memory. It's self-securing. Patches inevitably come out. It is software. It's got bugs. It's got improvements that you want to make to it. So patching. The self-securing autonomous database will monitor for patches that are available, automatically apply them with zero downtime. No need to reboot your database. It will autonomously self-secure. And finally, it's self-repairing. It will monitor itself for faults and detect and protect from those faults, all with zero data loss. Sounds amazing. If I were a DB, I'd be trembling in my boots. What am I going to be doing for the rest of my career? All of these jobs that I'm used to doing have been taken away from me. So I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Kashyap, who's going to just talk us through the DBA's role in this new world.
Thanks, Bram. And everyone, welcome again to the version 1 Apps Day. Yes, it's true. When I came to know about the autonomous database being released, I was a bit nervous about what I'm going to do now. I mean, this is the only thing I know. I know how to start, stop databases, patch them, upgrade them, maintain them. So I started doing a bit of a reading of my own. I read some blogs on Oracle. I read some blogs on third-party websites, like you can see there's a link for a Forbes article which has written a lot about the DBA's role in autonomous world. And after going through all this, I realized there's one thing which all of these articles and blogs speak about, one common topic. And that is to focus on the data more rather than just maintaining the database. Being a DBA, I have been working for the last 14 years now, if I remember. And most of my time is devoted to continuing environments to run in a business as usual format. And it's a high pressure job. We have to keep the production working and other environments working so that data is available at all times. Now that will be taken over by autonomous whenever autonomous will be used by a customer, which will give ample time for the DBS to work on how to present the data. Because yes, it's being managed by a system which thinks like an AI and a machine, but the data will be still used by people. And I think for understanding what people want, we need people. And I believe that a DBA has a very good understanding of how data is arranged in a database. We can build records, we can design records, we can create queries which will give results in a much more user-friendly and efficient way than ever before. Because now we have the time for that. Now we won't have business running after us to patch things because that will be happening behind the scenes. The good thing is that even though it is autonomous, DBS still have the access of monitoring the day-to-day activities, which I'll be talking about in the coming slides. But for now, I would like to hand over back to Graham so he can speak a bit more about the role of autonomous in PeopleSoft.
Thank you, Kashyap. So there are 3 types of autonomous database from Oracle, and all 3 of these are offered as cloud-based services within Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. They run on OCI, and they run specifically on Oracle Exadata hardware. This is hardware engineered and optimized for use with an Oracle database. We're not going to talk about that, but it's the premier place to run your Oracle database. And if you subscribe to autonomous database in the cloud, you get Oracle Exadata. The third characteristic is that it's a pay-as-you-go subscription model. So you pay by the CPU and for the storage. What you consume is what you pay for. Now, there are 2 types of platforms on which you can run your autonomous database. The first one is dedicated infrastructure. Dedicated infrastructure means that you will be provisioned a dedicated Exadata machine that only you as a customer are running on. So you get the whole machine to be running on. Alternatively, you can provision an autonomous database on shared infrastructure. This is where you're sharing the compute capacity of an Exadata machine potentially with other customers. They both have different pricing, naturally, but both are available. So what are these 3 types of autonomous database? The first one is autonomous data warehouse, a platform that's designed for data marts, data warehouses, machine learning, and large volume data gathering. Oracle Autonomous Transaction Processing is engineered for online transactions, applications like PeopleSoft, that also have a batch and reporting aspect to them as well. And the third type of autonomous database, the most recent, is one that's designed specifically for JSON data types. Now, we're going to be focusing on, not surprisingly, on ATP, Autonomous Transaction Processing type of autonomous database. And when you hear us in this presentation and at other times talk about ATP, it's the Autonomous Database Transaction Processing that we're talking about, ATP. I'd like to also just quickly mention Oracle Autonomous Linux. We're not going to major on this in this session, just simply because we don't have time. But in the same vein as Oracle have done with the database, they have automated parts of their Linux operating system. Now, if you know, Oracle Linux is based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. They're fully 100% compatible. But the Oracle Linux system is self-patching. It will monitor for patches and automatically apply those patches. You can apply the patches without any reboot of the servers, and there is capability within those Linux machines that will monitor the workload and automatically tune memory and other parameters like IOs. It's certified for use on PeopleTools, and Oracle Autonomous Linux is also supported in Cloud Manager. We have another session today on Cloud Manager that talks more about that, and it simply uses the Autonomous Linux image that's available in OCI. There's a link there I put in the slides. You can read more on that. It's a link specifically to running PeopleSoft instances on autonomous Linux, the self-patching zero downtime platform. Want to make mention also of a service that Oracle offers to all of its customers, and that is free resources, something for free. You don't have to spend money to get these. You don't have to exceed a certain threshold in spending to get these. You just have to have an Oracle Cloud account. And if you do, then you get 2 autonomous databases for free. They can't go over 20 gigabytes in size, but you can get them for free. That means you can use them to experiment and play and learn. You can even run a PeopleSoft demo database in it as well, because that's less than 20 gigabytes. You also get 2 compute VMs and a whole load of other Oracle Cloud Infrastructure resources for free. Not time limited, they're always free. So, to the main point of our talk, what does it mean to PeopleSoft customers? What does this all mean? Well, in July this year, Oracle announced certification for PeopleTools on autonomous transaction processing, autonomous database. It's a 19C version of that platform, and you need to be on specific PeopleTools versions to be able to run on autonomous 857.16 and 5805. Now, today at the moment, certification is only on the dedicated Exadata version of that platform, but we anticipate shared support coming soon. We don't know when or if that will happen, but we're anticipating it. However, not one to take much notice of certification in our own labs. We've actually got this working, and Kashyap will show us that a bit later on. So what does it mean to PeopleSoft customers? Well, as you consider moving your data centers to public cloud infrastructure, as you start moving PeopleSoft into public cloud infrastructure, what's the next step in cloud evolution? Well, it's to exploit platform as a service. What are the types of platform as a service you can exploit? Well, it's database as a service. You can take your own database to cloud, but why? Why wouldn't you just provision a database as a service? Then you don't have an operating system to worry about. You don't have patching to worry about. You know, all of those things, that hardware and networking and installations, all taken care of for you. So here's just a very simplistic model. You know, you've got your data center on the left, you've got Oracle Cloud Infrastructure on the right, and in this environment here, you've moved your PeopleSoft web and your app and batch servers to cloud, and you have access to Oracle's native cloud services, things like load balancers or file systems, email services, all provided to you as a service with no underlying operating system to worry about, no patching to worry about, and with guaranteed service levels. One of those, of course, is database as a service, or ATP. And you can attach the database as a service or ATP databases now into your PeopleSoft stack. This is worth calling out. You're thinking, well, Graham, that's all very well, but we moved all our PeopleSoft systems to Azure recently, or we've got a plan to move all of ours to Azure, or our organization is committed to Microsoft. That's fine. We're moving everything to Azure. Can I still utilize this? Yes, you can. A very recent announcement from Oracle and Microsoft is a partnership that connects their 2 clouds at the back end with highly secure, very low latency interconnect technology. So low latency and so performant is this that you'll be able to run database as a service, your Oracle database in cloud infrastructure, but host your PeopleSoft stack in Microsoft Azure. And you can read more about that on Oracle's and Microsoft's website. So I'd like to hand over back now to Kashyap, who's going to talk us through migration of PeopleSoft to Oracle Autonomous.
Thank you, Graham. Welcome back again. As Graham mentioned in the previous slide, we did use the shared infrastructure for working out in our lab that how we can migrate PeopleSoft data to autonomous database. And in the coming slides, I'm just going to briefly go through the steps of carrying out that process that we went through. There were certain links and reference articles uploaded by Oracle, and we had to read through them to understand what has changed in the movement of data from PeopleSoft to autonomous database. These are the links for those articles if someone has any more curiosity about understanding this, they can go through this or connect us with us, and we'll let you know, and we'll point you to the right information. This is just a basic overview of how the entire process went. So in the beginning, we created an autonomous database for PeopleSoft in the OCI. Then we used the basic export data pump utility, which is present in Oracle, and which is used for day-to-day export of databases and backups and refreshes. Then that backup was uploaded to the object storage using the OCI command line interface. We cannot directly move data from PeopleSoft database on premises to the autonomous database in OCI because the autonomous database does not give access to create directories because it's a compact system, it's a closed system, and it has slightly less access as compared to a sysdba access in the normal Oracle databases. From the OCI object storage, we need to migrate the data to autonomous database. And for that, we need a client server. This can be Linux or Windows. And from this client server, we make a connection to the autonomous database using the latest 19C client of Oracle. After we made this connection to the database, we run the import data pump utility to finally bring all the data from the object storage into the PeopleSoft autonomous database. First step, creating autonomous database. Before I mention how we created an autonomous world, I would briefly detail the steps which we currently use to create a database, or traditionally were being used to. We will normally start with planning out our operating system, how much CPU you need, what is the disk space, finalize this and give the information to the infrastructure team to provision a server. Then you download the latest software, install the software, patch it, test it, connect to it, and then provide it for the users to use. In my experience, this entire process takes about a day or two, if we are lucky. And what can you do in this time? Well, you can travel from London to San Francisco and come back and probably have enough time to even catch up for a coffee at Starbucks or any local cafes that you find around the airport. Now, all you need to do is enter the name of the database and click on this button, and then wait for 6 minutes, which is approximately the time that you have to wait for a coffee in Starbucks. Still waiting as the database is being provisioned. Then after 6 minutes, the database is ready to use. Now, after the autonomous database has been created, we export the on-premises PeopleSoft database. We should ideally do this on the server itself, but we can also use a client machine inside the on-premises environment. This is just a basic command which I used for exporting the in-house HR systems we have. Then we upload it to the object storage that I had mentioned in the previous slides. And this, I have used the parallel method, if you can see, and this is just to increase the efficiency and reduce the amount of time taken to export. Instead of exporting one big file, it breaks it down into smaller chunks and it uploads them at the same time, which reduces the upload time. And yes, this method applies to database of all applications and all sizes. We are working on ways to increase the upload speed even more. After we upload it to object storage, we now need to make a connection to the ATP database, for which we have to set up a client machine. As mentioned before, this can be on any OS, Windows, or Linux, and it can be in the OCI or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or it can be outside it. But for better performance, and from what I've experienced in case of uploading data of those large volumes, it's ideally suited to have this client machine set up inside the OCI. We have to install the 19C client for purposes of uploading from Oracle Cloud Storage. because yes, data pump utility has been supported for a while now, but to upload it to object storage, we need to use 19C because 19C has that feature. We can then connect to the ATP database by downloading the client credentials or the wallet, which is what it's called. And we can then copy that wallet, which consists all the information we need to connect to a database. This wallet then needs to be copied to the TNS admin, which is on the client machine server in the 19C home. As you can see here, the wallet for HCM9 to DMO is called wallet underscore HCM9 to DMO. And once you have this, test the connection using the TNS ping utility. And it will just, and if it's able to connect, it will come back with success message, which you've seen. You can see it's marked there. After we have maintained the connection to, or established the connection to the database, we can run the import data pump utility command to import data from object storage to ATP. Now, if you're a DBA, you must have run this command 1,000 times in your career. The only difference is that instead of using a physical data file, we'll be using the URL of the cloud object storage, where we had exported the data in the step 3. We'll be using the parallel mode in the import as well, so that we can import multiple files at the same time, reducing the time required for uploading the data. What we do after the database is created, well, we can connect to the database using SQL Developer App Web. This utility has been there for a few years, but to use it, DBS had to install it and configure it along with the services to be able to use it. But with Autonomous, it comes embedded. All we have to do is click on the link, provide the password, and we are in. We don't need to install any client on the server to be able to access, and it gives almost all the features that an SQL developer would give. The backups and restore can happen automatically. OCI schedules full backups every week, full backup every week, and there are incremental backups. In case we need a manual backup to be taken, the provision is also provided for that. The data files will be stored in the cloud object storage, and from there it can be imported back, or we can create a clone from it. We can continue monitoring the database in the same way as Enterprise Manager would, using the Performance Hub. This is basically just a sample image of a SQL Developer Web. As you can see, it has almost all the features the SQL Developer provide. You can change the schema here. Currently, we are logged in as sysadm schema. We've just run a standard command into the OpenDefin table, which is the PeopleSoft security table, which contains the encrypted passwords and Opera IDs. We can create explain plans. We can check the history. We can even load data into a table from object storage using this. So in case we have to connect to the SQL, we don't have to necessarily install the client anymore on the server, which kind of was always something which we had to spend some time on in the past. Basic example of how monitoring looks like in Autonomous database. This is an image from a Performance Hub, which gives you the details of how much CPU is being utilized, the wait time statistics for any processes running, number of sessions which are there. You can use a drop down from here and change from current logons to all the logons which happened in the past. You can choose the time filter and figure out how many sessions our database was accessing. Now we have got PeopleSoft in the Autonomous database. Now, how do we use PeopleSoft application with it? Well, it happens that if you're a PS admin and you are going to install PeopleSoft and PeopleTools, the good news is nothing changes when you're setting up the mid-tier PeopleSoft components. As a PS admin, we can continue using the DPKs to install PeopleTools on the server. It can be on any OS, and the servers can then connect to the ATP database using the wallet in the same way we used the client machine to connect to the ATP. We can use PS admin utility as we've been using for so many years to configure the web app and process schedulers. And after we have configured web app and process schedulers and patching for PeopleSoft mid-tier will continue as normal. Nothing changes on that front too. And after we have created all the web servers, app servers, and process schedulers for the ATP, we then log in. And after we log in, we don't see anything different than what we should be expecting in a PeopleSoft homepage. And this is an image or a screenshot taken from a PeopleSoft HCM PIA link, which is currently working on PeopleSoft Autonomous Database. This has been running in our lab for almost a month now. We run test processes on this every day, and so far we haven't had any problems yet. And we are expecting to continue working on other parts of it and come back with better results. I'd like to hand over to Graham to continue with the presentation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Kashyap. It's quite unremarkable, isn't it? PeopleSoft homepage running on Oracle Cloud against Oracle Autonomous Database. But as Kashyap rightly says, it's PeopleSoft. The fact that it has an autonomous database at the back end has all sorts of benefits, but it's still PeopleSoft. And PeopleSoft will continue to function in the same way as it does, whether it's running on our autonomous database as a service, your own Oracle database installation, or Microsoft SQL Server platform. So let's just wrap up what we've been talking about here. This isn't just about talking about Oracle Autonomous Database. What we're really trying to say here is, yes, Oracle Autonomous Database is now certified with PeopleTools. That's great news, and it's going to be really exciting to see where that goes in the coming months and years. But looking at the value of cloud technology to our PeopleSoft application, that's what we're looking to exploit here. And autonomous database is just one of those. And I mentioned earlier in one of the slides, there's all sorts of other native cloud services like file systems and email services, load balancers and authentication systems, none of which have an operating system, none of which require patching. And that's naturally low maintenance for us if we're working with those things. And Oracle Autonomous Database is just one of those benefits. So consider the value of running PeopleSoft in the cloud. We would encourage all customers to look at the value of running PeopleSoft in the cloud. What value can I get by doing this? Second thing I would call out here is that Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, it's a natural place for PeopleSoft customers to run their PeopleSoft systems. Now, you might be running PeopleSoft on SQL Server. And one of the questions we've had during our session today is, can we migrate SQL Server on-premises data to Oracle Cloud? Yes, you can. And we have in our labs instances of SQL Server that we've migrated from Amazon Cloud. And we've got instances of SQL Server that we've migrated from on-premises installations, all running in OCI. OCI provides virtual machines. On a virtual machine, you can install SQL Server, and therefore you can run PeopleSoft. And there are plenty of tools to migrate data from your on-premises environment to the cloud with either zero or near zero downtime. But OCI is a natural place for PeopleSoft customers because of other things. Cloud Manager, for example, the provisioning of PeopleSoft instances automatically using PeopleSoft to do that. And for those PeopleSoft customers who are running on Oracle Database Platform, then you can see clearly there OCI is a natural place for those customers. Oracle Database runs best in OCI. PeopleSoft is certified on Autonomous Database. Just keep watching this space. It's going to be really interesting. Autonomous Database isn't new. It's been around since 2017, but It is new for the PeopleSoft community and is now an option, and it'd be really interesting to keep watching the news on this. We'll keep you informed as best we can. And our final comment would be, whichever cloud platform you're planning to move to, currently running on, or even if you're not planning on making any moves to cloud at all, you can create immediate value for your PeopleSoft installation by adopting Cloud Manager. We have another session on that later today. Cloud Manager is a PeopleSoft product. It's free to you if you are a licensed PeopleSoft customer. It runs in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and it can streamline so many of your PeopleSoft selective adoption and lifecycle management processes. So I encourage PeopleSoft customers to explore and seek out the value that you can get from running Cloud Manager. And so I'd like to just thank you for joining us for this session. I think on our questions, we have one other question. Yes, we are already using Microsoft Azure for other non-PeopleSoft platforms. What would be the engagement point to start using OCI with Azure? Multi-cloud environments are not uncommon in our world, and I think we will increasingly see multi-cloud deployments in the workplace. No one single cloud provider has best of breed for everything. In the same way as we don't buy all our software from Microsoft necessarily, or we don't buy all our software from Oracle or from any other vendor. We pick what's best for our organization. Right now, today, if you're running on Azure, I would say get Cloud Manager up and running on OCI and just connect those two cloud data centers. Use the power of Cloud Manager to automatically provision your PUM instances, to manage demo, to provide you with the latest access to people tools, Kibana and Elasticsearch automated provisioning, in order that you can learn, develop, and explore the new features of PeopleSoft. Because you can't run Cloud Manager in any other cloud platform other than OCI. So thank you so much for joining Kashyap and I this afternoon. It's been our great pleasure to share with you the things that we've been learning in our lab. We do these things in our lab so that you don't have to. We learn all these things and share them with you because we want to try and create value for in your organization. And so if there's anything we've spoken about today that you'd like to talk to us about, you know where we are. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about anything to do with PeopleSoft Cloud, Cloud Manager, and OCI. So thank you once again. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for joining us at Apps 2020.